A mechanical spinning fan in a phone sounds like a real disaster. Moving parts, open vents, and an immediate water resistance compromise. Well, this actually has an IP69 rating with an 18mm rotor spinning and an 8550 milliamp hour battery. Today, we're testing this Redmi K90 Max. Mainly, we're testing its performance and its gaming, and to see whether that fan is a gimmick or not. The fan, of course, is the main headline when it comes to the design, and the rest of the phone, and the K90 Max in particular, is, I guess, pretty sedate in terms of its design profile. It's classic flat display, small bezels, boxy design, and it looks really, really good in hand, especially in this silver color. But the engineering behind the K90 Max and its ability to have an IP69 rating is super interesting and is linked directly to the creation of an isolated thermal tunnel that allows air to pass through this section of the board here and creates a cooling impact on the phone and doesn't impact the main logic board when it comes to water resistance, water impact, and dust resistance. Then there's the rear of the phone itself next to this now very often copied plateau, and that fan is of course two lenses that make up the camera system here. It's a 50 megapixel main and an 8 megapixel ultra wide, and they're pretty basic, to be fair, but not the main focus point of the K90 Max, but let's touch on them anyway. You get usable images out of that main lens, look pretty good, well detailed and sharp overall. You can even get 8K 30 FPS in terms of its video, which is a literal flagship spec. The ultra wide, which is 8 megapixels, is pretty basic, okay at best, somewhat usable, but I wouldn't rely on it. But overall, the camera system is okay, but it is an afterthought compared to everything else on the K90 Max. The main focus of this phone entirely is performance and gaming, with elements of battery, of course. But on the performance front, it's powered by the Dimensity 9500, which is a legit flagship CPU used in things like the X9 Pro and the Vivo X300 Pro as well. And it's an absolute beast, ranking near the very, very top when you run it through Geekbench's performance metrics. And if you wanted to see how that performed under heavy load, 3D Mark's tests on this show a few interesting tidbits. Firstly, there's a lot of throttling on that CPU. It's just below 70% when you put it under heavy load, and it produces pretty great results when you put it through Antutu's benchmarks, 3D benchmarks to be exact, when it comes to overall gaming performance as well. What's interesting here is the impact of that fan. Does it have an impact? In a word, no. Because if you run this through two sides, one through 3D Mark's Lifestyle Extreme test with the fan in smart mode, what you'll get here is just below 70% stability scores in terms of its overall throttling. If you actually switch this into its performance mode, where the fan is at its max speed and using all the time, which should give you the max level of cooling, you'll actually get significantly worse results in terms of things like throttling versus the other. And the weird thing is the blurb in the settings under that setting that labels the max cooling actually says that this will actually create a greater cooling experience, but will use more power, which for us, it showed neither of those. In fact, if you look at the temperatures, it's around about 3 degrees higher with the performance mode on versus the smart mode. So when you factor in that fan and you're using it in performance mode, if you put this pretty close to your ear, you can actually hear it spinning away constantly. So is this fan actually a gimmick? To an extent, yes, but I think that's an extreme test and extreme circumstances to actually demonstrate the capabilities of this fan. The normal day-to-day usage on things like battery and performance gaming, things like that, you probably aren't going to see those exact results. And speaking of battery, the K90 Max has some insane spec. You get an 8550 milliamp hour silicon carbon battery in here with 100 watts of wired charging and 22.5 watts of reverse charging, so you can use it as a power bank. In fact, this phone's battery at around about 80% is actually still giving you usage of around 30 plus hours, which is mental. So this legitimately is a 2-day plus, 2.5-day plus battery for most people when it comes day-to-day usage. In fact, we used this for a few hours and barely had an impact on its battery as a whole. Just goes to show the capacity and the performance of the battery is incredible. If you look at those 3D Mark tests, right at the bottom, when it comes to battery consumption, you're only using a small amount of battery when the phones are 100% and dropping it down. Normally you see double digits. It's clearly single figures on here, which means, again, for most people, day-to-day wise, if you're not doing the really high demanding tasks, including things like gaming, you're probably going to get 2.5 days, maybe even 3 days out of this particular phone. For the content consumers out there, the display, it's a 6.83 inch with 3500 nits of peak brightness, and it's punchy, vibrant, with great color reproduction. And when you want to watch band content on here or your social media feeds, you're going to get a great experience. And you combine it with that massive battery, legitimately, you could probably be on your phone all day watching content. Don't, but you can be. Even when you max out the brightness and play games like Call of Duty Mobile, you're going to get a super rich, crispy experience. No way do the colors wash out. Even at that peak brightness, they still look really, really good. And then the input in terms of the touch sampling rate is 480 Hz, which means you get fast moving objects. You can react to really quickly, and there is nothing in the way of input lag from you touching the display and getting the reaction. It's almost instantaneous. The main highlight, I think, in my experience of using the K90 Max has been its gaming performance. It's absolutely incredible. And there are a number of ways you can actually use this. You can use it handheld as you normally would, just to game on here. With the phone in your hands, you just game with the touchscreen controls. What you can also do is, through the Bluetooth settings, is add in a Xbox controller as an option, and it will remap the controls to your game. Then you have I guess a near console level experience, because you get incredible performance on this phone. And then combining it with a controller, you can then dock this and you can game all day long. And what I would say, one other key element on the top here in the text, you'll see powered by Bose. The sound output of this phone is absolutely incredible. It's probably the best, richest, deepest, clearest audio and sound output we've ever heard. And if you combine that with the Xbox controller and the performance when it comes to gaming, you have the best outward firing speakers and game performance we've ever had on any phone.
Leave it to Billy.
Most phones play it safe when it comes to design. The K90 Max may not be able to deliver fully on its dedicated fan experience, but at least it's trying to be just that little bit different. At around about £400, you are not going to beat this experience in any way, shape or form, because you have incredible battery, great gaming performance, and excellent, unrivaled sound output. So the K90 Max is a genuine winner. The only downsides we have here are the throttling, the fact that this is probably inaccessible for a lot of people to actually import in from China with custom duties, etc., and compatibility with software and SIM, etc. But if you were willing to compromise on a few things and you wanted the best overall game experience for less than around £400, the K90 Max is unrivaled. But let me know in the comment section thoughts on the K90 Max, and be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Until the next one, as always, we out.